Hello, Mill Housing Network family. Happy Thursday and welcome to the show. I'm very happy to be here today with our friend Heather Walrath from Navy Mutual. Hi, Heather.
Hi, how are you guys today?
Not too bad. It's I always call like Thursday a weekend eve. So, but it's okay as long as we get through that last day of the week, just stay strong, right?
Yeah, especially after a holiday weekend, it's even
Exactly.
double.
We feel pampered in that sense. Well, today, if y'all didn't know, our topic of discussion is all about life insurance and not just in general, but specifically going into service member group life insurance versus veterans group life insurance. And the way I've, looked at things like this, Heather, is, you could do all the research on your own, but sometimes it's just best to hear it from a pro, and that's why we have you with us today to help guide through these questions that I'm sure. I mean, I have a list, but I'm sure a lot of other people also have these questions. So we're just gonna dive right in if that's okay with you.
Perfect, let's hit it.
All right. So, like I was saying, service members group life insurance and veterans group life insurance, just for the purpose of today, so we're not rambling on too much, I'm going to go ahead and refer to that as SGLI and VGLI just to shorten it up. So, can you tell us what is the difference between the two?
Absolutely. So thanks for having me. I'm also a military spouse, so I've had to navigate all of this personally, and there is a lot of things that are misunderstood. But first of all, SGLI is a really great benefit that's available to all of our service members. So everyone who is active duty, once they come into service, they're automatically given SGLI policy of $500,000. Now you can reduce that amount if you want to, but the maximum you can get is 500,000, and that's the default. They pay $30 a month for that, regardless of their age, regardless of their health. They have that as long as they're on active duty, and then for 120 days after they leave active duty, whether they're separating or retiring. VGLI is the kind of the counterpart to SGLI that is available to service members after they leave active duty. It has very similar coverages for life insurance and additional benefits, but the cost is different. The cost for VGLI is based on the age of the member, and it changes every 5 years. So SGLI is while you're on active duty, flat rate for everybody. VGLI is available after you leave active duty.
Perfect. And that's kind of what I assumed, but it's just always best to clear the air and that and make sure. So, you know how you were saying, active duty versus being a veteran. So does an SGLI coverage automatically convert to a VGLI, or, if so, when does that happen? Or is that something that you would have to do yourself? How can you give us a little bit more into that?
It doesn't convert automatically, okay? It's an available option. So once someone leaves active duty, they still have coverage of SGLI for 120 days, and that's free. All right. At day 121, if they want to, they can have that policy convert to VGLI. But it does take action on their part. They have to go online with the VA. This insurance is not provided by the VA, but the VA manages the program. So you go to the VA site, and you can enroll in VGLI. You can get up to what you had with SGLI. So for most people, they have 500,000. So that means they can get up to 500,000 with VGLI. If for some reason someone reduced their SGLI coverage and they only had, let's say, 250,000 when they left active duty, then the most they can get with VGLI is 250,000. But it does take action. Now, the great thing about having SGLI is when you do transition, you can get VGLI without any medical underwriting. So typically, when you get life insurance, you go through a medical underwriting process. You have to write down, what medications you take, any health
Ah,
diagnosis, and then they decide if they'll insure you, based on your medical history. So with
wow.
VGLI, you don't have to do that. So unfortunately, I've worked with members who maybe are transitioning and have cancer or diabetes or MS or something where it's going to be difficult to get insurance, but VGLI, there's no medical underwriting as long as they get it within 240 days of leaving service. Now, They technically have up to 1 year and 120 days to get this program, but after 240 days, they have to go through a medical qualifying purpose. So, my tip for anybody transitioning is your magic number is really 120 days, because you do want to make sure that you've got coverage in place. You don't have any lapses, because after day 120, you have no coverage with your insurance. So, that's really important. The other thing about that conversion is VGLI is one option. VGLI is term. It continues while you're continuing to pay it, but they can also convert to whole life, and that's a different product. That is through there's 11 participating companies in this whole life conversion part. All of these companies agree there's no medical underwriting. They will give you a policy, but their prices might vary. Okay. At Navy Mutual, we will also do that for any service member. We're not officially part of the program, but we want to take care of our veterans. So we offer that as well. So if anybody wants to get our flagship whole life product, there's no medical underwriting as long as they're doing that within 120 days of leaving service.
And lots of numbers to remember too,
Yep.
so you make sure that you're not, missing a deadline and whatnot.
At
Um,
120, that's the number I tell everyone. Write down, circle, circle
I like how
again.
you
Yeah.
emphasize that by day
hmm
121.
hmm
So you kind of touched on this a little bit. So what happens to an SGLI coverage if you don't apply within that deadline? If you don't apply for VGLI? You know how you were saying you
Yep.
can, if you had a certain amount of coverage, you could do the same amount as well.
So midnight, 120 days, that
Mhm.
SGLI coverage is gone.
It's
Okay,
just completely
it's
gone.
completely
Yes.
gone. Okay, so you either have to take action, to convert it to a whole life policy or to VGLI with no medical underwriting, or you can certainly go someplace else and apply for other life insurance, through a private company. Um,
Right.
what people need to be aware of though is, after leaving service, if they're gonna do anything that's considered hazardous by that company, and that could
Mhm.
be an aviation job, a dive-related job,
Even construction.
yeah, construction, or if they're gonna be a contractor working for the government, in some dangerous
Mhm.
place, many commercial policies will have exclusions, that if something happens to the person when they're engaged in that type of activity, it doesn't pay out. So you wanna be really careful, with additional insurance to make sure that whatever activity that you're doing, that you have that coverage.
Right.
And that is one advantage of VGLI is that it doesn't have, those exclusions once you leave service.
Wonderful, thank you. How does the premium for VGLI compare to the premium for SGLI?
It's higher, okay? And for a typical term policy, your rate is locked in for a period of that term. So let's say you get a 10-year policy, 20, 30, your premium is flat. I had a 30-year term policy. It was $17 a month for 30 years, okay? VGLI, the price depends on how much you get and your age. So let's say we've got a service member that's retiring and they're 40, okay? Um, they are going to be paying $80 a month for that $500,000 coverage. All right. But when they turn 45, happy birthday. Now they're going to get charged $105. And then at 50, it goes up to 165. So VGLI gets pretty expensive as you get older. It finally caps out when you're 80. They've decided they will no longer increase it, but at age 80, you're going to pay $2,250 a month currently for that coverage. So if someone is relatively healthy, when they're leaving service, I always recommend that they reach out to other companies outside of that conversion to see what they would qualify for, because maybe they can get a 20-year policy that they lock in $40 a month and it's going to stay and they're not going to be subject to those increases.
Right.
So, at Navy Mutual, we're happy to talk to service members about that, how policies that you might be able to get through us would compare to VGLI. But VGLI is a very valuable benefit for someone that might be uninsurable because regardless of their health, they can get that benefit, but it's going to get expensive and considerably expensive as they get older.
And so obviously this is something that you don't want to push off and, oh, I'll get to it when I get to it, right? When time is on your side and you have, that amount of time to be able to lock in, like you were saying, the time is now to
Yeah,
talk to somebody.
there are a lot of benefits that are available to service members and their family when they're on active duty, but it all changes when you leave service. So
Sure.
if you wait until that time when everything is getting crazy, trying to make all these decisions, or you wait until you've got some health condition that pops up, right? All
Hmm.
of those things make it more difficult to get insurance. So I'm always encouraging people to, understand the benefits you have on active duty, but think about, is that enough for your family? And for
Right.
many people, $500,000 is not enough. So to get something else to supplement that. Um, I never would encourage anyone to decline SGLI because it has some other features like your family can get coverage. There's a family SGLI for the spouse and the kids. There's also something that comes with SGLI called traumatic injury protection. So I encourage everybody to at least keep something of their SGLI.
Right.
Um, but for many people, having additional policies is really important, especially if you can lock in those rates when you're young and healthy.
Hmm. Now, how about somebody, if, can they keep their VGLI if they are reemployed or they return to active duty?
Technically, you can, okay, but you can't have a combination of SGLI and VGLI of more than 500,000. So, because SGLI is cheaper, right? You're only
Hmm.
paying $30. It really would make more sense if someone becomes re-eligible for SGLI. Like, let's say they get out, they take VGLI, and then they re-enlist later, or they go into the reserves. Because if you're in the reserves, you can also get SGLI. It would probably make more sense to just take the maximum amount of SGLI because it's cheaper. In theory, you could mix them if you wanted 250 with VGLI and 250 with SGLI, but again, you're gonna pay more for the same
Right.
coverage. Mhm.
Right. No, that makes sense. Are there any tax implications for the VGLI benefits that are paid out to beneficiaries? Like, is it
Well,
something, a responsibility you have to be aware of?
no, actually, with most life insurance, the beneficiary, the amount that they get upon the death of the policyholder, that's tax-free money. So insurance proceeds are typically not going to be taxable. Whether it's VGLI, whether it's your Navy mutual policy, you don't pay taxes on that, the beneficiary. So that's very helpful, in terms of estate planning and things like that. With VGLI in particular, you can elect a lump sum payout, so it's all paid out at once, or
Mhm.
it can be paid out in monthly increments over 36 months. So you might want to think a little bit about your beneficiary's money management
Spending
style,
habits, right?
right? Someone, it would be hard to get that lump sum, would they blow through it? Maybe
Right,
that's better to stagger it. So that can be an option that that policyholder has.
right. Can a service member designate multiple beneficiaries for VGLI?
Yes, absolutely. So now it's all automated. You can go online to the SOS enrollment system. It's the SGLI online enrollment system, and you can designate your SGLI beneficiaries. Super important for people to think about, especially as they have children, they get married, they get divorced, updating that. Whoever you have named as your beneficiary is always going to trump what's in your will. So let's say your will says, my spouse and kids get everything I have, but when you came into service, you didn't have a spouse and kids, so you wrote down mom, right? And you pass away, well, mom would get that money, right? So,
Sure.
having those conversations I think is really important as life changes. And you don't want to wait till right before you deploy or something like
No,
that, right?
no.
On that stuff. So, have money dates, where you check in and you think about this. You assess your coverage to make sure it's still enough, as life changes. That's really important to do along the way.
Yes, and, again, nobody may want to discuss that possibility, but it is a very important conversation to have, it's not being morbid, but being realistic.
Right. It's planning, it's taking care of your family, right?
Plan exactly.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, what happens to VGLI coverage if the policyholder passes away or becomes terminally ill?
So if they pass away, then of course the beneficiary is going to receive the proceeds, right? Because that's the death benefit. But very good point. VGLI does have an accelerated death benefit option, which is a terrible name, right? But an important benefit, because what that means is if a member, if that policyholder, the veteran at that point, VGLI, um, has a terminal illness and a physician says you have 9 months or less to live, they can take a portion of that to be paid up front, up to half the policy. So maybe you want to take half of that and take your kids to Disney World, or you want to go ahead and just pay off the house so you make sure that
Right.
gets taken care of. That is an option for that chronic illness, but there are very specific parameters with that, in terms of what would qualify. So you have to have the physician's documentation.
Of
And,
course.
other policies that you get, you wanna look for something, called a chronic illness, rider, or again, the accelerated death benefit. That's a term that's used in other, whole life policies, typically, on the commercial side that might have a similar type benefit.
Well, thank you so much. I honestly, it was funny because I had a few other questions, but you tackled them without me even having to ask. So I really appreciate that, and I do appreciate your time today and all the information you provided.
Perfect. Yeah, happy to help, and we're always happy to help people navigate what's an appropriate amount for them at Navy Mutual. Everybody's number is different. I teach a lot of transition classes, and I always kind of throw out there this teaser. So, how much insurance do you need when you leave service? And I always get these $1 million, 5 million, and I'm like, it depends, right? It
Yes.
depends on your situation. So, if there's ever anything that we can do to help members kind of navigate what's appropriate for them, how to get additional coverage, in addition to what they've got for their service benefits. That's what we're here for, to have those conversations and to also make sure that you're really taking advantage of your military benefits. That's my side of the house to help you navigate all of that. So, always happy to help and have the conversations.
Oh, thank you so much. And for those of you who are watching today, if there were any questions that I didn't get to that you personally have, you can definitely reach out to Navy Mutual. We'll be sure to tag them in this live stream. And you can also go to navymutual.org. Heather, were there any other links that I should know about too? You can scan the QR code that's right above. I don't know if you can see it right above my head. Um,
Nope, those are perfect. That'll get you to us to answer any additional questions that you have. I'm always happy to help.
Wonderful. Well, we look forward to being able to speak with you again. And for all of you watching at home or on the road or anything, hopefully not while you're driving, but we hope that you enjoyed the show today. And thank you so much again, Heather.
My pleasure.